Imagine if you were helping a child to stop expecting a certain treat every day. You wouldn't tell the child off for kicking off and finding it difficult. You would know that if you were consistent with them every single day and said, yeah, I know you're finding this hard. I expected you to find this hard. I don't blame you for finding it hard. But that doesn't mean you can't push through the next bit. And I believe in you and I see the long term. So I think those two things can be held together. I'm finding this difficult, but I do difficult things.
Hello, I'm Cate and I am the CEO of Push, and welcome to our new series, Safe Spaces, where we ask leaders and other brilliant high-profile talent that we know to let us into their safe space and to understand a little bit better how they create them for themselves and for others at work and in the home as well. And a safe space is so much more than just a physical space. It can happen anywhere and is really about connection, asking the right questions, and then feeling really comfortable about sharing your responses to those questions. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce my brilliant guest today, who I'll be looking and hoping to create a safe space with, Shahroo Izadi. Shahroo, hello, how are you?
Hi, very well. Thank you for having me.
Shuru is a behavioural change expert and an award-winning author of 2 internationally published self-help books and a tech entrepreneur. Her empowering work has won her the Baton Award for Thought Leader of the Year at the House of Lords, and she has been described as Britain's answer to Brené Brown. Wow, what an accolade. I love that. I'm absolutely over the moon to be talking to you today because I think the work that you do will be so powerful in helping people unlock a lot of those beliefs that might be holding them back a little bit about the stuff that they're sharing. So thank you so much for being here today.
Not at all. Thank you for having me.
Now, I want the work that you do to literally come out within this conversation, and I no doubt it will. But let's start with all, as I tend to start all of these interviews, really to kind of understand a little bit more about you. What has been on your mind lately?
I've been thinking a lot more about what the next year is going to bring. I think the disruption my life was disrupted massively the same way everyone's was over the last few years. And I've been thinking a lot recently about what I want the next year to kind of look like. I think I, like a lot of other people, noticed that my values changed enormously. My priorities changed. It was brought to my attention a whole bunch of stuff about how I work best, what's most important to me. And I think kind of aligning my behaviors with that more and more, aligning my routines with that more and more has become way more important to me. So that's definitely been on my mind. Also approaching the end of the year, all of that sort of stuff. Like, how do I want next year to be different?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I feel very conscious about that as well. I mean, I don't know about you. I really feel 2021 was an absolute shitter, to be honest with you, personally and professionally. It was one of the hardest years of my life. I was in a terrible relationship and work was hard. But because of that, 2022 has been such a year of growth and development. I'm like, right, like it's almost, and I'm a massive believer in this anyway. I think you have to go through the really hard shit to come out the other side with brilliant insights and like, right, what am I going to do about this? How am I going to change? And I really feel like I've done that. So I'm like, 2023, you are going to be absolute killer year. Like, I feel ready for it. And it's almost like set me up for, right, this is what I want it to look like because I've gone through that work. Do you agree?
Yeah, I feel the same way. And you know what? During lockdown, I was living alone, working alone. And there was my second book had come out and I was getting ready to do the promotion and the press and everything just got, stopped, obviously. And there was a period of time when I thought life might not come back. Like those opportunities might not come back at all. That this might just be it now. Yeah. And I got really regretful, and I'm not usually a regretful person, but I really found myself thinking, oh, I never managed to do that, and I didn't manage to do that, and I didn't pluck up the courage to do that, and the online course thing, and the promoting yourself more thing, and the putting yourself out there and exposing yourself, and all the online stuff that sort of made me cringe, and I was holding back from. as soon as it felt like there was a glimmer of hope that everything was going to kind of get reset,
you're out there.
I was like literally out. Like I just didn't care. There were so many things that I cared about before, and I was like, screw it, because it might get taken away, and I might not get the opportunity. Like I haven't got time to waste. So that sense of urgency, it really, really gave me, and I kind of got over myself in a few ways. If I'm perfectly honest, all that delaying and that feeling of I've got all the time in the world really went away. And so for me, in that sense, going forward, it's definitely made me a lot more brave, and a lot more urgent.
I love that. I mean that for me, and this area of kind of development for me is I'm like, wow. But anyway, before we talk about that, and I want to talk a lot more about safe space and how we change that thinking. But I think it's really important that people understand a little bit more about the work that you do. So please, if you could pop it into a nutshell. I mean, obviously I've kind of explained a little bit about you, but how would you explain the work that you do to people and the changes that you can make with them?
I help people to change habits, essentially, and I help them to change habits on their own terms. And it's all the work that I do is originally informed by a couple of things. One of them is working in addiction treatment. So I used to work in clinical addiction treatment in the NHS, and then briefly for various different third sector organizations. And what I realized there is that so many of the evidence-based tools and the super simple tools, many of them are free. We can be using every single day on ourselves. And so I kind of broke it down into realizing when I was working in clinical treatment that so many of these tools that I was using then on people who had substance misuse problems were relevant to, for example, in my case, changing my eating habits, my disordered eating habits, to working on my anxiety, to looking at boundaries, like all these day-to-day things that you wouldn't normally associate with learning from drug addiction recovery. I was learning there. And the other thing that I draw from is personal experience. You know, I really struggled, whether it was with my mental health, whether it was self-esteem, etc. So now what I do is I take the tools that have helped me and that I've seen help other people, and I put them into different contexts, because ultimately we're all going to be trying to change habits at any given time. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to hit a rock bottom or whatever and come from a place of feeling really desperate. And I think that if we build our self-esteem and our self-compassion and our self-awareness as a lifelong ongoing mission that we've got, that when it comes to changing habits, it becomes a lot easier. So actually what I do really is just hand over tools and tips and advice through books and talks and things that help people to like themselves more, know themselves better, and back themselves, and like ultimately to close the gap between the advice that we give the people we love and the advice we take ourselves. So my work is really dedicated to sort of giving people the permission and the tools to ask themselves those questions themselves, and realize that a lot of habit change comes from looking at ourselves first.
Oh my God, I could not agree with you more. And I think what you've really summarized for me there, and this is actually, I mean, obviously the work that Push does, you know, is based upon individuals within organizations, right? So everything is going from micro to macro. For me personally, moving from that place of self-doubt to self-love simply came by doing more good things, right? You know, by having discipline and managing my actions, I had freedom of thought, you know, and that for me has been, and that's changed everything. Moving from self-doubt, I have moved from self-doubt and as a consequence of that, self-hatred, into a place of self-belief and a place of self-love. And that I see that you do on an individual level, but I hope that we do that on individuals which become part of a bigger organization.
I think that's absolutely wonderful. And I also think that shift is interesting, because, for example, a lot of people ask me, like, if you're helping people to love themselves and be kind to themselves, how is that not at odds with doing difficult things? Because if I'm kind to myself, then I'll just do whatever I want whenever I want to do it. And that doesn't necessarily mean managing to achieve my long-term goals. And I always tell them, like, when we define kindness or love towards other people or our loved ones who are trying to achieve difficult things or get through difficult periods, we don't minimize how difficult the thing is, and we don't try to make it easy for them either. We remind them, and we don't tell them to just throw in the towel when it gets difficult. That's not a definition of kindness or love when it comes to other people. Yet when it comes to ourselves, that's so frequently the case. We tell them to make the decision they'll be glad they made tomorrow. We remind them of their capacity to do difficult things, and we support them.
And there's acceptance, right? There's not challenge around it. It's like, you know, it's that this is difficult. and this is how we'll get through it, versus with ourselves, it's like, it's either no, it's not difficult, or it's just an overcome it, rather than a natural acceptance. So this is bloody hard, and not trying to ignore it or run away from it, or pretend it's not happening.
Absolutely. And I think holding those two things together is something that we're able to do for other people. Like I always use the example when people are struggling with change, in those moments when they want to throw in the towel, I always say, like, imagine you've disrupted your status quo, right? If you have a routine, you want to change a habit at work or at home or whatever, what you're doing is you're disrupting your status quo, whatever you're comfortable with. And I always say, like, imagine if you were helping a child to stop expecting a certain treat every day, right? That they were used to. You wouldn't tell the child off for kicking off and finding it difficult. You would understand it. You would know that if you were consistent with them every single day and said, yeah, I know you're finding this hard. I expect you to find this hard. I don't blame you for finding it hard. But that doesn't mean you can't push through the next bit, and I believe in you and I see the long term. So I think those two things can be held together. I'm finding this difficult, but I do difficult things.
So this gets us to this place of safe spaces, right? And the role of safe spaces in particular, well, from Push's point of view, of course, within organizations, but this can happen anywhere, right? And it's like, I wonder, therefore, if this is potentially why some people are scared about having these conversations or creating these safe spaces, because we immediately think that we have to come in with an answer. And actually, we don't. We just need to hold the space for someone to be and to talk about what's going on and to be there for someone and hold that acceptance, right?
Yeah. I actually think that assuming that you have the answer can actually be counterproductive, even though it's really well-intentioned. I think very few people, it kind of goes against caring about someone to think that they're going to bring a problem to you and that you're not going to try to solve it for them.
Yeah.
And so I completely understand why people would feel that way, particularly when it's a loved one, or you feel like, I have a useful thing to say here. And I think unless you've been in talking therapies or coaching, or you've had that space held for you where you can know the benefit of sharing in and of itself without any feedback or any crosstalk. It's really common to think that when someone's sharing something with you, that they're doing it because they want a solution. And a lot of the time that actually closes people down, and they kind of think, well, you haven't really heard me, because I just wanted to hear myself aloud.
Do you know what? I'm so grateful that you've said this, actually, because I think that you've just pinpointed something so well. Like, I want to reassure anyone that is listening to this, because I think that is the thing that does hold people back from having these conversations. Either I'm going to have to find an answer for someone, and I don't know, and I'm unlikely to know what the answer is, or I might not know what the answer is, or I'm going to have to listen to what you're saying, and I don't feel comfortable in sharing something that you might judge, or because you won't know, because you'll think you have to come in and answer.
Just the smallest statements can help enormously. I can't begin to imagine what you're going through.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to be helping you? I don't assume to know what you're experiencing. I'm not going to profess to, I'm not going to have the audacity to weigh in here, but just know that I see you.
So look, I'm so pleased that we had that conversation. I would love to know, from your point of view, do you feel, I'm getting a feeling that maybe you do. Do you feel comfortable talking to others about stuff that's going on with you? You obviously hold a lot of space for other people. Do you feel comfortable holding it for others?
Yeah, now I do. Yeah. But then I've written a book about it. So at the beginning, when my first book came out, I was scared shitless. Like I was sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Wicked, yeah. I was absolutely shitting myself, like, for ages. And so I had to kind of take the shame out of it a little bit. The shame out of the things that I thought I should be shameful for. And that took a little while. But for me, I also had the luxury of speaking to a lot of people who were going through the same thing and realizing that I wasn't judging them. the sorts of things that I was worried about. And I don't mind sharing because I've committed to the fact that I'm going to be a work in progress, personal development wise, for the rest of my life.
But I also think that alertness is where you're a constant work in progress, right? And where your greatest growth in those areas will provide the biggest benefit, right? The greatest insights and as a consequence, the greatest benefit.
Yeah. If it doesn't work on me, I'm not peddling it, frankly, because this is the other thing. When I first look at these tools and books and things, I could go all day thinking like, well, it might work for this person or might work under these circumstances. But if I can't get myself to do it and there's a friction there and I can't believe in it. And so I can't pass it on, if I'm honest. And so when I see people who make like hard, like whether it's influence or gurus or whatever, who are like hard and fast rules about how they feel about stuff and they're really doubling down on it now, I'm actually a bit suspicious.
Yeah.
I'm actually a bit like, how do you know that life's not going to come and shit on you and then you're going to have to like up the ante on the tools you're going to have to find and go back to therapy or things like that. I enjoy the flexibility. I want to be able to own the fact that I'm trying my best with the information that I've got right now and encourage other people to do that. Like I have no desire to be aspirational.
Yeah.
I just want people to know that it is okay to subscribe to this idea that you're always kind of looking to work on those bits of yourself from your own honest baseline as opposed to where you think you should be. I think the realness is really important, especially now.
I couldn't agree more. I think, and also it would be really, really inauthentic for it not to be, because at the heart of everything, we don't fucking control anything. Do you know what I mean? And that for me has been one of the most seismic things, realizing we don't control anything. When you work with people, how do you create a safe space for them? Do you think that comes from the way that you are in the first place, or the skills that you have? Talk to me about that. How, because you obviously do that with the results that you get. How do you create those safe spaces for people?
I don't profess to be an expert on anyone at all. I don't profess to know more about people than they know about themselves. I'm genuinely unshockable. I think that helps because I think everyone comes in thinking they're like the worst. And I think people feel that I get it. I completely get what you're saying there. Like I can really relate to that.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think also I don't give people goals. I don't tell people what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. I just help them to get from where they are to where they want to be and help them work out why they haven't got there. So I think a lot of the time people feel quite patronized. Like I don't tell people that you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And in fact, I don't even tell people how to do stuff because I think they already know.
I think immediately what I can see, right, the role of safe spaces, the role of this video series for me is to help people create connections, right? If you boil it down, it's to help people create connections, which when we transfer that over to organizations, I think is the biggest thing that is missing from organizations at the moment. The reason for that being, quite simply, we're not bloody together as much as we used to be, right? We're not together as much as we used to be. We are relying on connections or relationships of old, if indeed they were ever there, in order to help us create the business of the future. And so I want to help businesses and more importantly, the individuals within them to feel those connections again and to create those connections again. I think what you're talking about here is not only something that's transferable to any individual, but actually you could really use the skills that you use if you're a leader, right? If you're a leader, getting your best out of your people, because I think, whilst yours is specifically working with individuals to kind of coach them, to help them love themselves more, take care of themselves more, to fill that hole that's there. If you were to transfer that over for a leader to employee, there's something if I can build your self-esteem and get you feeling really good, I can empower you to do better work. Right? There's transferable skills there. So how could you share maybe a couple of things that you might suggest that leader might do in the same way that you would be working with someone to help create that space, that safe space, how to create that connection, to help get someone feeling better about themselves and therefore being able to do more good, as it were.
I think certainly giving people the space to create self-defined goals can be really, really empowering, and gives us an enormous amount of insight into what's important to people. I think also giving people an opportunity to paint an entire picture of what's going on in their lives right now, what's important to them, where do they want to get to, how have their values shifted. And I think also one thing I must say, working with sort of at a C-suite level or coaching at that kind of level, one thing which is really important is sort of leading by example. So a lot of this self-kindness stuff and be boundaried with your phone, etc. I can't tell you how many organizations bring me in and everyone will be like, well, that was really useful and actually that would really help my mental health and stuff. But if my boss is messaging me at 8 p.m, like that's my boss.
Yeah.
And you can come in with all the wellness stuff you like, but that's my job.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the time it is leading by example. And also when you see that your leaders are getting more done by taking care of themselves, it's really it's really compelling. Like when you look at a person, when I look at people that I aspire to be like professionally, they tend to be pretty calm. They tend to have quite a lot of impulse control. They tend to be pretty considered and not very hasty. And for me, being considered and not hasty and having impulse control and being able to put a space between trigger and response almost always means that I've been doing things that make me feel that way. Meditation, journaling, taking care of myself, tech boundaries, not waking up with my phone first thing in the morning, So actually those things are quite related. And I think more and more we need to lead by example and say, look, the reason I've been efficient today, let me show you how the sausage is made. Sometimes I'm going to get more done if I wake up in the morning 10 minutes earlier and I do some breath work. That's why you're seeing that I'm able to lead effectively today. That's why you're seeing that I'm able to motivate you, that I have the capacity and the positivity to then pass on that capacity and positivity and patience to you. And I think a lot of the time leaders, certainly a lot of the female leaders that I work with now, they are doing an enormous amount behind the scenes. And that vulnerability to say, look, it isn't that I need to do this stuff to stay okay. It's that I've chosen to do this stuff to optimize my performance. And it's the same stuff. Right. So I think we need to sort of reframe that a little bit from like this remedial, oh no, what's wrong with her? She needs to meditate, to, oh no, the reason she's the sort of person who doesn't email you immediately back with a bunch of hatefulness is because she meditates.
Yeah, she learns to respond. And also, so what I'm taking from that is not only the co-creation and the role modeling, but something that I'm actually, the two of those things together is not to focus on the outcome. It's to focus on the process, right? It's to focus on those daily things that we do and what we want to be known for and how we show up and how we behave versus that goal over there, which feels attainable or unobtainable and realistic or unrealistic. But this is what I can do every single day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What you can do is think, right, this is where I want to be in 6 months' time, or this is the sort of person I want to be. And then start aligning your choices, like choice by choice by choice, tiny little ones, even if it's like drinking water, whatever it is. It's like, these are the choices that I tend to associate with this sort of person. Yeah. And so I want to make them today. And you're absolutely right. What I've found is letting those goals be a byproduct of your day-to-day choices is a really good way of going about it. Yeah. Because a lot of the time people are like, why is it that even though I want this thing over here, I'm on a day-to-day basis, I'm sort of normalizing it and trivializing it and I'm not putting in the effort, or am I sabotaging myself? People ask me a lot of the time. And it's like, no, what you're assuming is that your long-term goals, which are sometimes quite abstract, are going to motivate you today on the spot. Yeah. Your relationship with that behavior you want to change today is a totally different task to anchoring yourself in whatever relationship you need to have with the outcome. So what can I do today that moves me in the direction of this outcome? And it doesn't need to be specific either. You can feel it out. You can be like, right, these are my choices today at prep. These are my choices today when I answer this email. These are my choices when my meeting gets cancelled and I decide to either fill it with more meetings and work or go for a walk. Like, what are these choices? Because so many of us wait until the shit's hit the fan and our bucket is empty, you know, our capacity is low, and go looking for stuff. And that's what I mean. Like, more and more, I'm not needing to. The more we focus every single day on filling that cup a tiny bit, even if it's just a drip, even if it's just like, oh, there's a patch of sun there, I'm going to go stand in it. The more when we get to those moments where we have to make a difficult decision, we're able to make one that we're proud of the next day. And I think that's the shift we need to make. And that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That is the major thing. It means that you have decided that when it gets to a point where you have to make a difficult decision, you've already invested, you've already preempted. I think that's really powerful. Yeah, massively.
Do more esteemable things, right? I could literally talk to you all day. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. I have one final question for you, though, before we go. What one thing will you do for you to look after yourself even better?
Great question. I am going to commit once and for all to at least a year of not looking at my phone in the morning. Like for longer.
Amazing.
No good comes of it. And I always do stints of it. And then for some reason or another, I don't know, either I'll go on holiday or something will mess it up. But honestly, no good has ever come from that for me, ever. And so if I could make it half hour or an hour of just no phone in the morning, I really think that by the time I go to answer things, then I'll be a lot more my most Oprah self, as opposed to waking up and being like, oh my God.
I love that your Oprah self is like your barometer for life.
Yeah, exactly. Just making decisions I'll be proud of. But honestly, it's like such a shit way to set yourself up. There was one point at which I was just waking up in the morning looking at Twitter and I was like, imagine if I opened my bedroom door every morning and all of this came, like Donald Trump and like the horrible, horrible trolls just ran into my room and that was the first thing I saw in the morning. Like that's what I'm voluntarily doing.
Terrifying.
Rank. So that is my commitment next year for sure. What about you, Cate?
What's my thing that I'm going to do every single day? Or what am I going to do? I think it is going to be, I was going to say committing to the gratitude thing. I think it's either the gratitude and the journaling, which I need to commit to every single day, because that is shifting my thinking. I actually, do you know what? I'm going to summarize it as be less afraid. And that's practically the way that I'm going to do it. That's practically, because me journaling and writing my gratitude list shifts my thinking, which immediately makes me less afraid, less fears, immediately less fears and more love.
Good for you. That's lovely.
Oh, what a treat to speak to you. Honestly, I could literally sit here for hours. It would literally be a video series that was about 12 hours long. I don't think anyone wants that, but it has been a joy. Thank you so much, Shahroo. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.